Hello, everybody. Here's Natasha from the Feminine Space podcast. And today we have another beautiful guest who I am so excited to interview because I met her in person and I found her to be such a talented, strong, and beautiful woman. And I really wanted to, even though I heard in person just a tiny bit of her story, I know that there's a lot more to this beautiful person. So I want to introduce to you Lisa Swanson. She's actually based in the UK at the moment, so we have this overseas interview, and she's a mother of three, a coach, consultant, and cognitive hypnotherapist. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it because like my story, like the stories of the women that we've interviewed in the past few episodes, it took a while to get here. It took a while to kind of find our place, find our career, and to be where we are at in this moment. So here is Lisa, everybody.
Hi, Natasha. Thank you for having me on your podcast. This is really exciting. It's lovely to see you again. As you said, we did meet in person in Tenerife. Fantastic time with you. So yeah, it's lovely to see you again.
So great to connect. And it's really interesting because I do see, I guess, some similarities between our work, right? Because we work with people, maybe the clients you have are in a different sector, maybe they're more in the corporate world. But what has led you to the work that you do now? Or maybe what have you, I guess, gone through yourself to be in a place now where you see that human connection and you see that there's healing that's possible in another person, or there's wisdom innately in another person. How did you come to this understanding, or how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Oh, I love what you said there. That really resonates with me because I came from a very different place to where I am now, I guess. And I'm sure lots of people will resonate with this too. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was always quite driven, I guess, had a very strong belief in myself, or so it seemed. And so I made my way up the corporate ladder. I trained as an accountant. I worked in investment banking. I loved the fast pace. But it became faster and faster. And I ended up catching the earlier and earlier train until, I was getting up at 5 a.m. And I'd be running up the escalator at the tube. Like, that was really important to gain that extra 30 seconds. And then you find myself eating lunch at my desk rather than, meeting up with colleagues. In fact, a lot of us ended up doing that. And it became just normal to me, I think. Fast pace, take on too much, say yes to every piece of work. I had the kids as well, bringing up a family, and there were a few points in my life where I thought, oh, this isn't what I wanted to do. Not the kids thing. I always wanted to do that, but in terms of my job, it's like, no, I'm sure I wanted to do something else. Anyhow, there was a point where I thought, well, I don't even know what I want to do, but I'm interested in things like, about the mind and how that works. So I started training as a cognitive hypnotherapist, which then took me down the coaching route. And in the meantime, my work had moved a little bit. Well, actually, it hadn't moved. I'd just taken on more work, and I was looking after the grad program as well. So I loved that. With the young people, mentoring or coaching or just guiding them. And anyhow, so I had all this going on at work, taking on possibly too much. My daughter got sick. We bought a dog. A whole bunch of extra things came on, and I found myself crying at my desk, and that's just didn't seem like it was me. And the more upset I got, I was getting upset about why I was upset. So anyhow, it turned out I slowly burnt out. Eventually the doctors persuaded me to take some time out. I was like, okay, 2 weeks over Christmas, I can do that. But 2 weeks rolled into 4, into 6. And anyhow, no idea what was going on with me. And I stumbled across an understanding of how the mind works, which a lot of people would call the inside out understanding, or principles behind clarity, or 3 principles. There's a number of names, but it's basically an understanding of how we operate, how we experience life, and you have experience with this too, and it just changed things for me. You know, one minute I don't even know how it changed me, but I just got so, I knew there was something there. I was touching the edge of something that seemed to be making me feel better, seemed to make all these things, all the things outside of me. And what I see now is, I thought that all these things outside of me, my boss, my daughter's illness, the new dog, my chair, the fact people were coming in early too, and I wasn't getting my quiet space, a whole raft of things outside of me appeared to be making me feel this way I didn't understand, you know, trapped, overwhelmed, anxious, and angry at times, whatever it was, all these raft of emotions. And what I came to understand through the coaching that I experienced was that I was trying to fix all those things. And I think we can do that. We can feel like outside circumstances are really affecting us, people, circumstances, situations, and then we try and fix them. But of course, we can't fix all these outside things. There's maybe some little things we can do, but the majority of things we can't. And so that to me seems where the overwhelm comes from. And a lot of my clients are repeating the same thing to me. They have a similar type of experience. So seeing actually the truth behind it made a huge difference to me.
That's so great to see, because I see it in your face and also in how you speak, that you really get it and you really feel it. It's not just another great, you know, spiritual theory you read in a book, or, you know, it's not like a step-by-step, you know, this will change everything for you kind of thing that you just kind of slapped onto, you know, your forehead. It sounds like it's something that's really integrated into how you feel, how you see the world, this whole human experience, it seems. And that's really interesting, because on this podcast, I often touch on the fact, especially for women, how life can sometimes be such a struggle. It can feel like this is never-ending to-do list, plus things to fix, things to manage, and it just goes on and on and on, and it never seems like there's a point in which things are all just going to be okay, right? Like when we have that kind of, when is this going to stop? And then at other moments in our life, we have those really beautiful feelings or really great moments where things are okay, we're in flow, we're at peace with ourselves, we're suddenly at peace with the person right in front of us too. And to me, that's fascinating. And to me, that means there is hope. That means there is a solution out there. And to see you actually embodying it so beautifully, that goes to show, you know, I'm sure the world didn't suddenly just change before you, but in a way it did, because something happened within you, it seems.
Yeah, and it's exactly like that. And it was hard to touch on it, but there were instances where I would just laugh at the I don't know, it was like it was a joke, like I'd found the truth, and before I'd been stuck in this big illusion, and the whole purpose of life was maybe to figure this out. Yeah. And to find this out. And so little things would hit me, like I like fast cars, and so I have a nice little sports car, nothing too fancy, but I love the speed. That sort of resonates in my life. I like that pulling away fast. And so I sit in the car, and I'd be maybe stopped at a junction, and in the anticipation of pulling away fast and this nice smart car and my little speed and a little bit of power, I get this lovely feeling come through me, and it felt like it was probably coming from the car. And the funniest thing was the number of times that I found I was pulling away, and I didn't pull away fast at all, because I wasn't even in my car. I was in my husband's hybrid car. All those feelings are still there. So it wasn't the car. Yeah.
Oh.
It just wasn't the car. I thought it was the car, but it wasn't. It was all coming through me because I was sat in this little hybrid thing and it wasn't pulling away. And then I would laugh at that experience, and that really showed me how much the power of thought was involved in my experience, and not so much the outside circumstances. So to see that coming through yourself, it is amazing. And another experience I really laughed at was, and this showed me how I'd lived my life for quite a long time. I found myself at the front door. I had been shopping. I hadn't planned to go shopping, but I had a couple of bags of food and stuff. And because I'm a great multitasker and I'm a, superwoman, all the rest of it, I'm not putting the bags down to get my keys out of my handbag. I'm holding them, getting my keys, rumbling around, trying to fumble for the door. And I suddenly feel this feeling come through me, complete annoyance. Now, with the understanding of how my feelings and thoughts are one and the same, I stood there for a second, feeling this feeling that seemed so familiar, but I hadn't felt it in a long time. And became conscious of the thinking behind it, which was, why is nobody helping me? And at that moment, I realized I'd lived my life never asking for help. Any of you women resonate with that one? Never asking for help, but thinking people should know what was going on in my head, and that they should know I needed help. And nobody even knew I was at the front door. And I was getting all this poisonous, toxic feelings, generated through from my own thinking. And I must have stood at the door and laughed for about 5 minutes. Oh. And then what occurred to me later when I was telling it to a friend was, what if my family thought, had their own, well, they obviously have their own thinking. What if they thought, gosh, whenever mum goes shopping, everybody's scat, don't go anywhere near her because she's always in a bad mood. So that would create my annoyance, would then create the complete opposite to what I wanted.
Oh. That's so simple. And I can just imagine how for maybe you, even years ago, would have gone through that same experience again and again, not making a joke out of it because you didn't see the humor, you didn't actually see what was going on. So that frustration or that annoyance, that was just there, and that was a fact of life, right? Until you kind of suddenly open your eyes in a way, wait a second, what is actually happening?
Yeah, it really was an eye awakening. You're right, because it wasn't visible to me. The ridiculousnly of it wasn't. It was real. It was serious. It was how life was. Mm-hmm. That was my reality. And to see actually how I'm living in my own thought-created reality and everybody else's really did something for me. The truth of it, I think, Natasha, that's what really can change your life, is seeing the truth of something. Mm-hmm. Seeing the truth behind something, really understanding something, whether it's a mathematical equation, that then makes you brilliant at that type of maths, or whether it's an understanding of how your mind works. It does something for people, and that's what I love about what it's done for me, and how I can work with my clients, just guiding them to see what is going on behind the scenes and what really is creating their experience, and dropping all that stuff, like the stuff that I had. Really real. It was really made up.
Yeah. And I see that completely. The lightness that you have now is almost like a joy when you reflect on these experiences, which otherwise maybe in the moment kind of seemed like a nightmare because it was so real. It was happening. There's no way out of it, right? And I see that huge contrast between the lightness we can have when we're just observing from this place with this distance, with like a full understanding of what is actually happening. And when you're in the tornado, and I kind of see that, like when you're in the middle of it and you feel like you're trapped and you can't get out, and that's all you see, it's as if you're in the middle of the tornado and all of that is just spinning around you, and that's all you see. When, I mean, the tornado, it's only so small and there's all that space that's clear away from it, around it. And so I get this image and I see that beautiful contrast between the two feelings.
Yeah, that tornado made me think about that, actually, how I still get caught up in tornadoes, but I think I'm just more aware now. I see them as, if that's a tornado, possibly I'm not seeing something straight. But what I see about a tornado is right in the middle of a tornado, it's really quiet. And that's like the inside of you and me. There's a little space in there that when you touch that, you can see things a bit more clearly, even if all this stuff's going on around. And it's still whirring through your head, but you know that inside there somewhere, there's this peace, this quiet. And it's there to be touched, and then it sort of makes the rest of it dissipate, because that's just weather. That is just weather.
Yeah,
always. And it goes.
Always changing, always coming, always going, always going to be almost out of our control. It's just happening, right? It's like life. It's always passing by. It's always happening. I want to ask you one last question, which I know is a big question, but I really want to ask you, which is, with this understanding, or with what you are sharing with your clients, because we're talking, until now, quite on a personal level of, the little moments in life and how you've been experiencing even maybe relationships and family and like general life, that kind of thing. But when it comes to, say, a corporate client, or when you're dealing with issues that's, touching on or impacting a whole organization, how does that carry through, or how does this understanding kind of help something that's so complicated, so complex, and almost, it's like an organism, right? An organization or a company.
Yeah, well, if you think about an organization, so I work both with one-to-one clients and, to private clients and corporate clients. If you think of an organization, it's filled with people. It's nothing else, is it really? It's people. That's what it's made of, really. And every person, whatever their walk of life, is still the same. They still have all these innate capabilities. And whether a client is coming because they have an addiction to alcohol, or they're stuck in their career, or they just keep reaching for the chocolate bars and biscuits and whatever, or they are burning out, whatever it is, underlying that is a fundamental misunderstanding of where their experience is coming from, because it can seem so real that the alcohol is what makes them cope or feel happy, or that the chocolate does. And what I've seen quite clearly with myself and my clients is that it's not about any of those. It's not about any of those things. Often what happens is our minds are so caught up, and we're trying to get away from the pain of our own thinking, not realizing it's our own thinking. It feels like the outside world. And we can get into the habit of reaching for something, whether it's, a chocolate bar or drugs, or, some other habit of, going out every night, or whatever it might be. And what seems to happen is that change so when your mind is really full and really busy, and you go to, let's use a bar of chocolate, for instance, and you go and you think, a bar of chocolate will help me. I'll feel better when I've had a bar of chocolate. Actually, the thought of going to get the bar of chocolate and walking off to go and get it, that's enough to quieten your mind. So you haven't even eaten the chocolate. The chocolate's not even in front of you. It's just not the chocolate that's sorted out your mind. So your mind has this innate capacity to settle down. And knowing that it does, that can really help people, because people think, and it can really seem like you can get really stuck at the bottom of your emotions. But knowing that that's part of life. They go up, they go down. That's the ebb and flow of our emotions. That makes us human. And we get really scared sometimes when we're down here. Well, people can get scared when they're up here. People can have some scary highs too. Scary highs, scary lows. But if you're on a roller coaster, right, like the human experience is, if you know you're on a roller coaster, you know it's going to go up again. You know that it's going to go down, and you don't so worry about it. Life's not so scary. Does that answer your question?
No, it really does. It really does, because it takes away that control freak within. It takes away building upon the stress. Because one thing is for it to go down, you're like, oh, wait a second, it's going to go up anyways, but we make it much more than it actually is, and the story goes on, and we almost make it worse and worse and worse. We add more layers of thinking, we add more layers of emotion and how things are supposed to be. We try to fix it, it doesn't work, and in the end we have this pyramid that's just balancing on this needle. But I see that, because it always starts from like one person, one reality from within. And that's something that I've noticed with my work. As I started, I was like, oh, I want to help millions of people. Well, why don't I start with one at a time, right? And I think this is exactly what you're saying. Yes, if we're talking about, oh, how do we help a huge organization or the corporate world with this one understanding? Well, why don't we start with one reality, one person? Because that is going to shape how they see the world. That is going to change how they relate to others. And that is going to shape, the work and if a business, if that's what they're doing, or the life they have. So that, I think, more than answers the question.
Yeah, and it does take just the one person, like you were saying. So you take one person and they get to see how life really works, and they get to hear beneath what other people are saying, and they see that other person's humanity, or they see that they're caught up in their own thinking. It changes how they relate to that person, how they react to that person. They can respond rather than react. It's having that little bit of a space, isn't it? So you can respond rather than react. And so if they're not reacting to the person who's all caught up, then the person who's all caught up is not going to react back. That you're not creating that extra layer. And so I love the fact that one person can really change a dynamic. So work with one person at a time, and whether it's in an organization, or it's a parent or a child or a teacher, that they touch so many different people, and just through their understanding can really quieten other people down, and when their thinking goes awry.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I thank you so much for sharing everything. It's taken like a really deep turn, because we just get straight to the core of how things work, where our experience comes from, and the problems that we perceive. How can we actually resolve them? And for me, when I just reflect on our conversation so far, there are two things that I really encourage the listeners to kind of do with me, right? One is that thinking that we women don't need help, yet we're like screaming out for help, well, there are people who are on this kind of upward journey, or people who have maybe more of this experience or this understanding, and we're here to share that, right? There's nothing much we're sharing other than what we have experienced ourselves. And yes, you can call it help, or it could be just a connection where we learn from one another. So that is there. And then the second thing is also how, all it takes is one person. So because sometimes our motivation is not really just ourselves, but our loved ones wanting to fulfill a greater meaning or purpose, or trying to create a positive impact. And if that is what you're after, then it also starts with that one person. That person is you listening, right? I'm not talking to anyone else, you. So exactly. So I kind of want to wrap up this interview with those 2 points, because I think that's essential. That's gonna make a huge difference in your life if that is what you choose to have, or if it's something that you're ready for. So I'm going to give you the floor, Lisa, and please share with the listeners how they can get in touch with you if any of them are still confused about the 3 principles, or just understanding, or what the heck we've been talking about the whole time. How can they know more? How can they, see life in a way that's clear and more peaceful?
Thank you. Yeah, so if anyone does want to get in contact with me, either to work together or just to have that initial conversation, or like Natasha says, to clear up any confusion, then reach out to me. My email is lisa@inmindflow.com. That's lisa@inmindflow.com. And yeah, we can have a conversation. Thank
Awesome.
you, Natasha.
You're so welcome. And everyone, if you missed any of the details, or that email was too hard for you to remember, then head over to femininespace.com/Lisa, Lisa, and you can find her website, her email. Everything will be listed out there if you want to get to know Lisa further. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Lisa, for coming.